reduce any cause of harm, and make patient error far less likely. The question is, how do we do this? This is something that needs to be done for us to work towards the UN goals, something that works towards the SDGs, which do not only talk about accessibility, but also talk about quality of care as one of the things that every country has to aspire to. It is fundamental, therefore, that while we talk about accessibility, we also look about putting some minimum standards for the unorganized segment. If I just take an example of the pathology industry, we have something like 300,000 labs in India, of which only 2,000 are accredited. So 99.99% of labs, even today, there is nobody monitoring, no minimum standard, no audits happening, no external testing, and that's a very scary situation. Not to say that everywhere there are errors, but it just says that without that check and balance in the system, we are unaware of what actually happens behind the scenes. And all of us have heard common stories of misdiagnosis or tests not even being done, even though they are required for the patient. And unfortunately, the patients don't have an idea that this is what actually happens sometimes behind the scenes. So, what is the right of a patient, and what is the patient charter that we can set out for them? And the whole idea that we have is to drive the concept of patient safety by launching a microsite that really talks about choosing safer healthcare. And for all of us here in this room and others who are available online, and those of us who are practicing healthcare according to ethical standards, this can actually be a great way for us to share all the good quality practices that patients should demand as a part of their safety and their right in India for the future. I'm just going to stop here, and we're wanting to invite the panel and the moderators to really talk about two different subjects. We're going to have two different roundtables. The first roundtable is going to be a perspective of quality and quality systems in India, the healthcare quality development in India, accreditation, and its impact on quality role of quality tools. And the second one is going to be talking about embracing patient safety. Can we really protect patients while ensuring access? And Global Patient Safety Action Plan made by WHO, the opportunities and challenges in India, medication and medtech, and the safety from the patient's perspective. These are the topics that we're all going to cover as we launch this microsite on patient safety. In this particular microsite, we are going to be having videos on medicine safety, hospital, diagnostic safety, guidelines and resources, short blogs, leadership quotes, and social media engagement activities to really be a one stop where patients can come to understand what is happening in Indian healthcare. This, of course, would not have been possible without the overwhelming support of many people in this room. And I want to just mention a few names like Dr. Narottam Puri, Dr. Atul Mohan Kochar, and thank QCI and NABH and these two individuals for really partnering with NATHEALTH on this particular program. We also have a technical content advisory board created by the participation from government and industry, which are going to advise on the content of these messages. So this is really going to be a tremendous initiative by NatHealth, government, QCI, NABH, and the industry all coming together to really show our solidarity with patients on ensuring that their safety and their care is our top priority more than anything else as an industry. I'll stop here and I'll leave it to the panel to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, quality is close to my heart, and the Institute of Medicine says that between the healthcare we have and the healthcare we could have lies not just a gap, but a chasm. And in today's panel, we will be discussing with a multidisciplinary panel of experts and practitioners in the field of healthcare quality, medicine, and medtech industry. Really, how can we bring about change to close this gap in the Indian context? And we will be talking about 6 different dimensions of quality. I know we have a subsequent panel which is really going to talk much more in detail about safety, while we will cover that as one of the dimensions, but really focusing more on how can we make sure that the care that's delivered is effective, is efficient, is timely, is patient-centered, and very importantly, it's equitable. We don't live in one strata of society in India, and how can we talk about quality for everyone in the country? So to begin with the panel, I'll pose my first question to Dr. Vijay Agarwal, who is the president of CAHO, the Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organization. Sir, as a leader, globally and in India, we hear a lot about quality. I'd really want to ask you that how can healthcare leaders actually walk the talk? And what can they do to create a culture which nurtures quality and safety?
Thank you, Abhaji. I didn't know I was going to be the opening batsman, but thank you. See, culturally, uh, for us, talking has always been much easier than walking. And in healthcare, walking the talk is even much more complex. And walking the talk of quality takes almost another dimension because most of the leaders who are running the institutions are so used to only looking at the balance sheet and the profit and loss that they don't even look at the quality dimensions of the organizations that they are running. What is it that is holding them back? What is it that they can do? So first thing is that quality has to become an important thing in the top of their mind, that it is as important as keeping the institution financially viable and sustainable. It is also important for them to see why is it. So maybe they look at the quality things more as an expense and not as an investment. They are not understanding the cost of poor quality is huge, and it is something that has to be kind of understood by them, and therefore they must understand that quality is a very prudent investment which they need to do. Some of the healthcare leaders, when they have large hearted, so they say, all right, let's go for NABH accreditation. And once I get that, all right, let me get the joint commission done. So the thing is that they sometimes feel that getting an accreditation becomes the kind of a milestone. Oh, we have now become the quality hospital. Unfortunately, the kind of celebration they do on achieving that accreditation is so short lived, because accreditation, my friends, is the beginning of a quality journey, not the end of the quality journey. They have to understand that by getting accreditation, you have only understood the grammar, you have only understood what should be done in a hospital to start pursuing the quality journey, and that's what they don't do it. And then they must understand that the quality is happening in the departments and functions. They must reach out to the every department, and every person in that organization must be also given a kind of a expectations. Once you start looking at the some kind of a dashboard, just like you have the dashboard, financial dashboard, you will start talking to all departments, and quality is needed, whether it is the department of cardiology or housekeeping, or whether it is pediatrics or security. Everywhere you are going to need the issues of quality. The quality is going to be also by them developing teams, and team building is a hugely important issue. Culturally, we have all been trained for individual brilliance, and unfortunately, culture requires more of collaboration and team building, and where even an individually bright person may have to take a back seat to take his colleagues along with him to make a very, very viable and good department. Another important angle that any person who is trying to walk the talk of quality will be to understand that we have to have a culture of learning from mistakes. It is extreme, it is in fact impossible to build any institution which is going to say that we are not going to have mistakes, because to err is human. The thing is that most of the CEOs will throw a fit whenever they will come to know that there is a mistake that has happened in their hospitals or organization. It requires a large heart to embrace a mistake. But very important is to learn from that mistake. The issue is this, that you have to develop a culture where those mistakes are being analyzed. And another even more important thing is, are you going to learn only from your mistakes, or you want to learn from the mistakes of others, which have already happened in the other institutions? And unless you do that, there has to be a mechanism of pooling these kind of mistakes that we are able to do. We are, for example, at CAHO, the organization from which I belong, and I bring your greetings from there, we have created this platform called Convert, where we are inviting hospitals to report their adverse events anonymously. And then a very important thing is that we keep on talking about the care being patient-centric, but again, that's only a lip sympathy. Majority of the hospitals, for example, even the rights and responsibilities which are of the patient are not being communicated to them even in the language which that person can understand. So there are huge things, right from, I would say, design issues, design of the building, design of your processes. They have to be flexible. They have to make sense to the people. And last but not the least, we need to develop a culture where we are able to embrace innovations, we are able to embrace technology. Today, technology is one thing that can make healthcare equitable, affordable, and efficient. So I feel that walking the talk of quality for any healthcare leader is a complex issue, but I think the most important is that he has to be open to understand and listen and act on that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal. You said it so beautifully that you really need a leader who creates that safe space for errors to surface, for us to learn when mistakes are made so that they don't recur again. And they create a culture where people can work in collaboration, work as teams. And you also touched upon the cost of poor quality, which is often underestimated. So my next question is to Mr. Narendra, that we believe there is a business case for good quality, and poor quality comes at a cost. Could you expand and share a few examples of what are the economic consequences of poor quality?
Sure. Thank you, Abba. Firstly, very happy to be here at the NATHEALTH Summit. Quality is a topic which is very close to my heart, and I think a lot of the people over here. I'll start with just expanding on what Dr. Agarwal mentioned, but through what our Union Minister, Nitin Gadkari, said a few weeks back. He actually told the car manufacturers, the automobile manufacturers, that to produce low-cost cars and improve margins, don't compromise on quality, don't compromise on the quality of spare parts. I'll leave that thought with you because here we're talking about the healthcare industry and we're talking about diagnostics, we're talking about medtech products, which go for us to lead a better quality life. And that's why quality, if it is important in the automobile industry, it is probably paramount and most important in healthcare. What we've seen, and Amira stole some of my points here, but we come from the same industry. And in diagnostics, as she said, 99% of the labs are not accredited. And why is it important? Because as a person who goes for a blood test, very rarely, seldom we ask, what's the methodology on which the reports are being done, what's the values, how is it being done? We don't. We just give a sample to whoever comes, collects the blood, and then we don't know what happens behind, right? Whether it's done with good quality metrics, it's done with automation, semi-automated, how it is done. And that's where it becomes the responsibility of the government to make sure that accreditation is really pushed so that there's at least some kind of a basic benchmark that is there, that people are getting what they see as results, they're getting the right results over there. And we all understand that more than 70% of the clinical decisions are based on diagnostic results. Now, if this result is not correct, we can just visualize what is going to be the next course of action, right? It's going to be missed cases, it's going to be a burden to the healthcare, which we cannot even actually compute and understand what it is and how it happened. But if the first step in diagnostics we're able to correct, to make accreditation go up from 1% and make it mandatory and set up some basic SOPs on how labs are run, I think that itself will start on a good note in increasing the quality of healthcare. I also have to applaud the government that post-COVID, they have taken a lot of steps in this direction. So the health technology assessment that happens is a good first step towards assessing different technologies that are available. And the government spending also has increased. We are seeing a lot more public-private partnerships that are coming out. What is going to be important is how the health technology assessment gets percolated across various stakeholders across the center and the state, different decision makers, to make sure it gets implemented, it is evaluated on a regular basis so that innovation has a place in it. And the next step to that would be to go into value-based procurement so that the right technology with the right kind gets the right price point and gets the right benefit to the patient. And over here also, there is limited awareness, but the government has made good steps in that direction, because now they are allowing labs or allowing hospitals to take decisions where 30% of the decision can be based on value, features, but this information again needs to be percolated. So what I'm really looking forward to is how HTA, which is a combination of cost effectiveness and getting the right technology, the right innovation for the patient, and value-based procurement, how that evolves in the future to really take quality at the next level. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Varde. Very relevant points that while good quality sometimes requires investment, we sometimes underestimate the cost associated with poor quality, a wrong diagnosis, wrong treatment, and what the patient needs to undergo as a consequence. And also, very importantly, when we compare technologies, it's important to look at the value, look at both the incremental effectiveness as well as the incremental cost to make a fair comparison. And yeah, there's some unanswered questions that while the government is doing it for the public sector, how can it be more informing private sector decisions? So thank you very much. So I'll now ask my next question to Mr. Rupak Barua, who's the Director and Group CEO of AMRI Hospitals. Sir, I wanted to ask, equity is a dimension which is sometimes underestimated, undervalued in your hospital, as well as for the broader Indian ecosystem. How is equity kept as a very important dimension while you are providing quality healthcare?
Thank you so much for asking this question. It's a very important part in terms of whenever we are talking about quality. In many ways, we introduce quality system, quality process, quality protocols, but maintaining the equitable medical services, delivering equitable medical services is a major way of concern. Now, how we do it, I mean, maybe most of the hospital also doing the same practice, engaging the same practices. So first of all, whenever you were talking about equitable delivery of medical care, you will have to see first that the manpower. So first we see, because manpower is the most important part in place who will deliver the quality care or the equitable quality care. So the major part that we see, this your credentials, privileging of the doctors, that is very important part that we see. And all the medical professionals or the paramedics or the nursing parameters, all they are quite well qualified and well trained in the system. That is the first part. So they are in place, whether they are placed in the exact ratio that we are talking about. Maybe the patient-nurse ratio, the patient RMO ratio is very important. If a patient is in the critical care, is under ventilation, the patient ratio should be, nursing ratio should be 1:1, or maybe in some other cases, maybe 1:2, 1:4, and so forth. So these are very important part. The manpower, placing manpower is very important part in terms of maintaining a quality, equitable care. The other part that which we have introduced, that is most of these processes, whatever the processes we have, just to maintain the fairness of the treatment part, is we maintain this year the technology, we take the help of the technology. So almost all our services, all our process systems, these are all actually through, I mean, this is the system that is the prescription, the medical records, exactly all we are talking about is through your electronic medical system. So whenever there is any difference of the treatment or in difference of the services, that we are in a position to capture, and whatever the all the clinical pathway we are creating for delivering any kind of particular, any kind of treating any kind of disease, these are all standardized clinical pathway we had maintained. Now, how to follow that one? Yes, of course, that we take through this your electronic medical record system. So there are many systems and places are in place to maintain this your equitable quality care. And moreover, that is the most important part. The other side is how many you are reviewing the practices. So we have a system in time to time with the mortality, or it's all the systems actually we are in place where we review, and whatever the outcome of the review through the expert, we do a lot of audit, and whether we are maintaining the systems and all, or the care and the equitable care that we are placing. So all those things is in place, and accordingly we see that the best practices are placed in the hospital. So this way we measure, these are the few areas that I have mentioned, how we provide equitable care to the patient. Thank you.
Great to know that by design, your intention is to give equitable care by making sure the manpower remains. Sorry, great to know that by design, the aim is to give equitable care so that you ensure that despite the location of the hospital, the staffing pattern remains same and there are standardized processes. So irrespective of who accesses care, they get the same quality of care. For the next question, I'll move to Mr. Shrikant Srinivasan, who is the head service for South Asia for GE Healthcare. Mr. Srinivasan, we heard Dr. Agarwal talking about CAHO as a consortium of healthcare providers working to collect information on adverse events. We do know that technology, with all its potential good, also can have harm. So are there mechanisms by which the industry monitors and collects information on adverse events that can take place?
Thanks, Abha. To answer that question, I'll take one step back and talk about the initial premise of all doctors, all healthcare professionals, the Hippocratic oath which they take of doing no harm, right? That's the first premise which is there. The second premise, which is there very clearly, is all of us in society, okay, have a common goal of keeping our families safe, our friends safe, the society safe on an overall basis. With that two premises, when you take this forward, what I look back is an ecosystem which we need to form, right, which has all these facets which come together. So, for example, very clearly in the developed markets in Europe or in the US, this is quite mature. The system of awareness, the system of the process itself of reporting adverse events, technology-based use of all this, acting on those, everything is fully evolved and mature. Obviously, India is still evolving in terms of healthcare, and slowly it is catching up. Very clearly, the first one obviously is for the government to take a lead and put in strong policies, clear policies in place, which ensure that all adverse events or all near misses are reported. Right, that's the framework which needs to be done. The second one, which I think Narendra also talked about, is accreditation. Right, the ability for this industry to be regulated is extremely important because it touches lives. Right, the ability for those accreditation to include, right, the reporting of adverse event is a big point around that. And I want to bring out NABH, NABL, QCI, all of these bodies who are already working to make that happen, right? And once that accreditation happens and it becomes 100%, I think half your battle is won. So people, the industry is aware, the industry knows what needs to be done. The other one is obviously awareness of all of us as common citizens about our responsibilities and the need for us to raise any issues up, right? That's something which I think needs to evolve, needs to be much better than what it is there today. And that's something which we as industry bodies, we as hospitals, communities, government, all of us have a role to play, and we need to continue to play that. And I do believe that NatHealth and NABH and QCI are going to do that in terms of raising awareness, in terms of quality and safety. That will go a big role to play. But having said that, now coming to systems and processes, right? Very clearly, expectation is there are two things. One is a leading indicator and one is a lagging indicators in terms of safety or quality, right? When adverse events happen, it does not actually mean saying that there is a catastrophe which has happened, right? It can be a near miss. It can be a impending indicator of something could go wrong. And all of these, once we start reporting without fear or without the thought of punitive action coming in, right, creating a culture in that, we can start developing these kind of leading indicators so that behind the scenes, the regulators, the accreditation bodies can work towards preventing real, I would say, accidents or adverse events to happen, right? So from that perspective, I would say saying that all the framework is there, the ability for us to bring it forward through government policies, the ability for us to rope in the accreditation bodies, accredit the hospitals and the entire stakeholders, and ensure saying that we put this in place is extremely important. It's just started happening in India. In some cases, companies like us, which are already present in other countries, have taken a lead. So we already have a system which is global, and we follow that also in India, and that works well. So all of this put together, I think, will evolve in terms of where we need to be.
Mr. Srinivasan, very well summarized. Healthcare touches all of us. So as citizens, I think we have a responsibility, but we also need systems and processes, stronger regulation, stronger coming together of framework through accrediting bodies, as well as a culture which allows us to feel safe, as Dr. Agrawal said, to raise issues, and when we are feeling unsafe, to report it. I'll come to my next panelist, Mr. Kshitij Kumar, who's the Vice President for Health Systems at Philips. Sir, we heard technology being said by a number of panelists, and we do believe technology has great potential to improve communication and coordination between patients and providers, between various healthcare provider teams across the continuum of care. Can you share maybe what your views are on this, and if there are any innovations that are being currently tested in India?
Yeah. Thanks, Abba. And thanks to my opening batsman, Dr. Vijay, the middle order batsman, Dr. Barua, for setting the tone and leaving it for the tail enders like us at the technology to deliver it now. So let me start by giving maybe like a concrete example. And let me talk a very specific example out there of oncology care. Right? Today, if you look at oncology care, and let's take an example of a breast cancer. The woman first goes to a gynecologist first, hands it over to a radiologist. Radiologist suspects some things, goes for a biopsy, goes to a surgeon, goes to a radiation therapist, and in all this, the number of hands off is only going to complicate things for the patient out there. And it does that even today, right? And then you have the tumor boards that happen in person with physical papers, all those reports, etc. Can technology help there? The answer is yes. Is it already operating in a lot of parts of the world? The answer is yes. So I personally think if we keep the patient at the center and start devising the care pathways and even the healthcare systems around the patient, and technology can actually solve those issues. I think a lot of companies, including Philips, is putting patient at the center and making sure that today, while we have a disintegrated information, which is not moving from one silo to another silo, technology today is able to provide that. And imagine a tumor board which is virtual, which is actually happening in a lot of prestigious institutions already happening, where you just don't need to be there physically. You could get the second opinion and the opinion, and you don't need to be there at the same time, same place. And technology is able to break that barrier. And I think that the future is bright.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'll build on what you said to ask a follow-up question to Dr. Poonam Bajaj, who's the director at the NABH. We heard a very beautiful example. It's not beautiful, but it's a very realistic example, if I may say, that the care that we experience is often fragmented in a very complex health system. And technology has great potential to improve coordination, communication, and less errors. So can you share more about what NABH is doing in this space, especially with all the digital healthcare reforms that are happening in the country?
Thank you, Abha. So, NABH has always catered to the needs of industry, healthcare industry. So, if you see the journey of NABH in 2006, the standards for hospitals were launched, and there was no looking back. We launched almost 23 standards after that, and now we have standards for all kinds of facilities. You name the kind of facility, and we have the standard. So we are catering to the needs of the healthcare industry. Now it's the need of the hour to to enter into the domain of digital technology. More and more hospitals, more and more healthcare organizations, they are adopting digital health processes. And obviously, COVID fast tracked that. So it's the need that NABH also enters into this domain, and we are proud to say that we are collaborating with the ABDM, because ABDM has already launched as per the dream of our Honorable Prime Minister, the 4 components, namely the ABHA, HFR, and then Health Professional Registry. So NABH is committed to support ABDM, and we are doing our bit, and we have entered into MOU with ABDM, and we are promoting the components of ABDM. This is one. Second is, we are on the demand of NHA and ABDM, we are into certifying the health solutions, ABDM compliant health solutions, and we have already done pilot, and we'll be soon be launching a full-fledged scheme on that. And thirdly, we will be very shortly coming out with the digital initiatives. So NABH will be launching digital health standards. We know that the hospitals, as they are moving towards digital health processes, there is a need to bring quality, to see quality for the digital health processes. So we will be launching digital health standards, and the standards will very shortly be on the website, and all the stakeholders, whosoever wants, can give comments on the draft standards. And this is about what NABH is doing from its side.
Thank you, ma'am. So it's great to see that the digital technology hopefully will transform what we see in terms of healthcare quality in the coming decade and improve integration across the continuum of care and address some of the problems that Mr. Kshitij very clearly outlined. I think we have another 5 or 10 minutes, so we wanted to open it up for questions from the audience. Would anybody like to ask any questions to any of the panelists? Post-lunch, everybody's a bit tired. I have lots of additional questions. If there are no questions from the audience, I can ask a few from my side, but I do want to give you a chance. Yes, please, can we have a mic at the back of the room? Sir, if you can introduce yourself and please tell to which panelist the question is posed.
Hello, I'm Dr. Abhijit Patil. I represent Krasna Diagnostics. I am basically taking care of quality processes in my company. So with that perspective, I feel trained quality managers. There's a lot of dearth of trained quality managers, persons who can handle implementation and testing of quality processes at their centers. So assessors coming, assessing, giving their results is one part, and implementing the processes is another part. So I would suggest there is a lot of scope for training the trainers, which I feel if it happens, the quality processes are automatically going to increase, and the assessors are going to have it more simpler to have the processes tested. So I would, it's a sort of request in this platform. I take the opportunity that there should be initiative to train the trainers in the form of quality managers who can implement these processes. There are some digital initiatives taken, but I think there is a lot of scope for more rigorous training.
Thank you. That's a very, very important question. And I know my panelist on my left, Dr. Agarwal, can speak in detail about how Kaho is actually doing work. So, sir, please, over to you.
Yeah, this is, of course, the DNA of how our organization, which was almost like an offshoot of NABH, we created that just like an NABH has an army of assessors. We have created a army of people whom we call as quality implementers, both as a basic and an advanced level. And in the last 5-6 years, we have trained more than 2,000 people in the country who are basic and advanced certified quality professionals. So it is there. You're welcome to look at it at kaho.in.
So we have time for maybe one, maximum two more questions. Yeah, can we have a mic in the front, please?
Hello. So my question is regarding the point of care solutions that we have right now. Like to cater the needs of our healthcare system, government has a focus on solutions that are point of care and are accessible to the uh, far extent population of our country. So how like our government or even the you can say all the institutions are focusing on quality care of such you can say point of care solutions, and how to manage the dispersal or discard of such like we have seen in case of COVID, there were many rapid tests that were allowed for the patients. So how we are managing the biohazardous substances, that is one part. Second part is on the quality of that. Like automation, we understand there's a lab accreditation system, but how to manage the point of care solutions?
I wanted to ask Mr. Kshitij, Mr. Srinivasan, would you want to take any of?
Yeah. So in any healthcare system, especially the point of care becomes a very, very crucial one. And we all know that. And the way I see it evolving is becoming enabled from AI, that even let's say an ASHA worker could actually deliver a good quality care with support from clinical decision support systems that are backing her, let's say, advisory in some sense to the inpatient. That's a kind of a vision that we are working towards, saying that how can we make it so AI enabled that you could, even the point of care towards the last mile is not just dependent upon the top-notch brains, which will be probably be most likely sitting in metros and cities like that, to get that and bring it up to the last point. That's a way at least the technology companies are really looking at. If we can't get the doctor physically to the last mile, how do we get at least the brains and the powers through AI, through technology, to the last mile?
To add to what Shiti said, important is to make it simple, right? Whatever point of care products or solutions which are being provided the last mile, which does not have that kind of clinical training or expertise, right? The ability for us to use that point of care solution should be extremely simple, right? Very straightforward. And the output which it gives should be very, very easy to interpret, right? For example, let's say in COVID, right? We're not talking RT-PCR, but we're talking rapid tests, right? It's a very small kit, which is very simple to use. And then it became proliferated and it started getting used much more. And that kind of results, right, are quite accurate to that extent. That's one. The second thing to what Kshitij again said, let's say saying that nowadays there are areas where there are home ICUs, right? That example, you use a lot of monitors, right? And non-invasive blood pressure and stuff like that. So the ability for the monitor itself to give you indications that if something is going wrong in very simple terms by either audio signals or by a message or by a warning and stuff like that, and it also prompts you saying that what you need to do once something happens, does go a long way. There is no other way from that that we can bridge the gap of skilled professionals in the far out regions. And that's rapidly evolving, and with technology being available, with connected internet being available in all parts of the country, I think it's going to get more and more simpler.
Another hand raised, but we're actually at end of time. Are we permitted to take another question? Okay. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Charuda Taroda, and I'm a physician representing Asian Healthcare. My question is directed to Dr. Poonam Bajaj. I think NABH has done an amazing role in how they have changed the entire quality landscape in India since 2006. But I think we are actually missing a very major vertical, which is home healthcare, because with the demand and the need increasing, patients and mainly physicians are actually having quality impact in patients getting quality healthcare services, from as basic as a wound dressing to as complicated as getting a home dialysis done. So, and with the aging population and being a multi-million-dollar industry, how is NABH looking at that in providing some of the quality solutions and providing uniformity across so many companies providing home healthcare?
Thank you for your question, Doctor. Just for the information of all, that we'll soon be coming out with the standards for care homes. So we are working on a few more standards apart from care homes. We are working towards the standards on allopathic clinics, and then dialysis, and even derma. So very soon you will see that these standards will be out, and obviously, we'll be very happy, that we'll be catering to the needs of this part of industry and stakeholders. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And with this, I would like to conclude the session. A very warm thank you to all our panelists and our chair for the session, as well as the participants for your engagement post-lunch, and the organizers for making quality a central theme. May I request you to please give a big round of applause to all our panelists. Thank you very much.
May I now request all the panelists to stay here for one group photograph. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, Ms. Ameera Shah. Thank you, Dr. Poonam Bajaj, Dr. Rupak Barua, Kshitij Kumar, Shrikant Srinivasan sir, and Narendra Barde, and Dr. Vijay Agrawal for this amazing discussion. So with this, we now move on to the patient safety discussion. So the next roundtable that we are going to have is on embracing patient safety. Can we protect patients while ensuring access? And for this, I would like to call upon on stage Dr. Anupam Sibal, who is the moderator of the session. Anupam Sibal from Apollo Hospitals. Mr. Pawan Chaudhary, CEO and MD of Vigon. He would be joining us online. Mr. Sanjeev Navangul, MD and CEO of Bharat Serum. Mr. Rishabh Gupta, General Manager, Baxter. Ms. Ratna Devi, Director, Patient Academy for Innovation and Research. And Dr. Deepa Dave, National Director, Lab Operations, Pathkind. Can I also request Dr. Narottam Puri, Advisor Medical Operations, Fortis Healthcare, Advisor Healthcare Services and Medical Value Travel, Federation of India, Indian Chamber of Commerce, and ex-chairman NABH and Principal Advisor QCI to also come up on stage.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the NATHEALTH team for inviting us, getting us all here. It's a privilege to be a part of this very important session where we're going to be discussing something that needs more attention than it usually deserves. After all, there are 134 million adverse events every year in the world. That's a huge number. And when there is an adverse event, sometimes it's minor and there isn't much to worry about, but sometimes there can be serious implications. There can be disability and sadly, sometimes even death. So there is an impact on the family. There's an impact which is physical, emotional. There's also a financial loss. And quite often the reputation of that institution and healthcare per se gets hit when serious events happen. And then, of course, there's also something that is quite often forgotten is what it does to the healthcare provider, what it does to the nurse, what it does to the doctor when something that shouldn't have happened happens. And there is this whole second victim that, at least in India, does not receive any attention at all. So in recent years, there has been a change in the narrative, and more we are hearing about patient safety concerns. And in fact, the World Health Organization in 2019 passed a resolution on global patient safety, and that then culminated in a roadmap, the Global Patient Safety Plan for 10 years from 2021 to 2030. There are 7 strategic objectives. And the good news is that India has signed on to the World Global Patient Safety Plan. And I've been involved in how this plan has been created. And I think it's very comprehensive. It takes into account everything that can possibly go wrong. And very importantly, looks at what we need to do so that what happens shouldn't really happen. But actually, when we look at harm, it's quite simple that harm usually happens for very basic, simple reasons, and actually simple strategies can prevent that. For example, communication between doctors and nurses, nurses and nurses, doctors and doctors. Um, you know, some basic amount of precautions before procedures are planned, before surgery is conducted. And even today, one hears of the wrong patient or the wrong site which is operated in a patient, and that should really never happen. About medication, look-alike, sound-alike medication, about patient falls, and these are basic interventions that I think if the organization decides to set right, then the incidence of these adverse events comes down considerably. And to discuss this important topic, we have a stellar panel today, and it's a privilege for me to introduce our esteemed panelists. We have Pavan, a dear friend who unfortunately is not able to join us in person, but that of course is not going to take away the enthusiasm, energy that he shall pass on digitally to us. He's the CEO and MD of Vigon and chairman of the Medical Technology Association of India, multi-talented man. Many of us know him for his talents beyond business, author, life coach, TV host, and writes in the media on different aspects. We have the privilege of having in person Sanjeev Navangul, who's the MD and CEO of Bharat Serum, served on the board of J&J, has had diverse leadership positions over his 3-decade career, has been vice president of the Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India, chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce Pharma Committee, chairman of the Medical and Regulatory Committee, and has very diverse experience. Next to me is Mr. Rishabh Gupta. Rishabh is the general manager of Baxter and looks after India and the neighboring countries, and he's responsible for driving the priorities that Baxter has in this part of the world, and has an impressive track record of turning around businesses. So really happy to have Sanjeev and Rishabh. And then we have the two ladies, dear friend Ratna, who's the director of Patient Academy for Innovation and Research. And we recently spent a few days together in Geneva at the World Health Organization talking about patient safety. And she brings a unique perspective on how patients perceive patient safety and what needs to be done in this area. Again, an area. Could we just check the audio? There seems to be a buzz or a hum that is it just me hearing it, or are you hearing it as well? there is. So can we just have someone to check that, please? And really, what is it that we need to do in India to enhance the engagement between patients and healthcare providers? Welcome, Ratna. And then we have Dr. Deepa Dave, who's done her MBBS and MD from Lady Harding, spent a number of years at SRL, establishing more than 300 labs, and has been with PathKind since its inception and is the national director of operations. This year, giving importance to the voice of patients, the World Health Organization has decided that the theme for this year's Patient Safety Day, which is observed on 17th of September, is really giving voice to patients for patient safety. And I think having Ratna on this panel will add a huge amount of value as we go on discussing this. So I'm going to set the ball rolling by asking each of our panelists for their opening remarks. I'm going to start with Sanjeev. Sanjeev, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Anupam. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we saw in the earlier panel, we discussed patient safety on versus quality, I think, or equal to quality. But there are several other aspects of patient safety that we miss out. For example, you mentioned about awareness. Patient awareness is a simplistic thing. I'll give you a couple of very simple examples. In diabetes, the world average on adherence is 218 days, which in turn translates to about 1.7 points increase in HbA1c. You can imagine the impact. Quinolones, which were mainstay of treatment in so many infections, some kind of infections. When you studied over a period of time, you found that 40% of it was because of non-adherence and not completing the course. So the impact of some of these is so high that when we talk of patient safety, we somehow do not include some of the other aspects of patient safety. We focus so much on quality that there are so many other things that don't happen. And the other stories of reporting, patient reporting systems. PROs are becoming very, very important. Patient reporting outcomes are becoming so important that if patients start reporting what is happening, we might get to a better situation, because the gaps that are seen in usage of medicines or healthcare tools by patients could differ from actually what is being prescribed or what is being told. So this might improve if there are more reporting systems. In the vaccines case, we saw it very acutely that globally, in countries there are good systems like VAS, vaccine adverse event reporting system. In India, we actually lack some of those. For example, if we use the COVID platform for something like VARS, it might be very, very useful because it's technologically well advanced, but we need to do that. The other, I deal with a lot of biologicals, and I see the quality definition is very different on potency. And therefore, is that being looked at as a parameter while it is included in IP is something as a big fight going on all the time with the IP authorities, that pharmacopoeial standards should be more closer to what the nature of the medicines are. And that is another case where if the standards don't match that way, you might have a lesser potency biologic, which might go to a patient and again affect patient safety or patient outcomes. So there are several aspects. My always point has been on patient safety is that we try and concentrate it so much on quality alone that we miss out on a lot of other things that happened around patient safety. And my feeling is that that is something that we should ensure that we consider a lot.
Thank you very much. Very important points. In fact, the other day we were having this debate that Indians, by and large, are very tolerant when it comes to adverse events reporting. For example, if you look at vaccine trials, quite often a little bit of redness and the limb becoming a little sore and some amount of fever would be passed off as normal, but it actually should be reported. And somebody was telling me that when they looked at their trial data in a large cohort, and there were virtually no adverse effects reported from India, and for the same vaccine there were so many reported from Europe and America, because out there the mother would say, hey, listen, it's become sore, it's a side effect, whereas in India would let it pass. And I think that's really about lack of awareness, and I think that's an aspect that we need to address as well. Ratna, for your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sibal, and thank you to the organizers for having me here. I'm Dr. Ratna. I'm a trained physician. I've been involved in patient safety in 2017, working both nationally with a panel of experts that was constituted by WHO India and the Ministry of Health to create the National Patient Safety Framework 2018-2023, and then subsequently the Patient Safety Rights Charter, and was involved deeply with the patient safety flagship program at WHO Geneva, working as a civil society partner to design the the elements that go into patient and family engagement. And I've been very inspired by our chair and his leadership abilities on how to engage people. So with your permission, I would like to have a simple audience poll and just two questions. One, a show of hands on how many have actually read the Global Patient Safety Action Plan 2021-2030. Well, if the knowledgeable and august audience has not read the action plan, then I'm not too sure how patients and families will be engaged in it. So my next question was, which objective in this addresses patient and family engagement? Obviously, that's not going to be answered. Second, because we are Indians, let's look at India. How many of you have read the Patient Safety Framework 2018-2023, and what are the 6 objectives in it?
This is really hard, Ratna. You're asking very difficult questions. You know, you're asking specific objectives and
Let's
so on.
be honest. If we don't even know what we are talking about, how are we ever going to implement it? So I think before we start engaging patients, we need to first educate ourselves and start to understand what we actually want from the patients and how do we want to go about doing it, because patients are not going to get empowered on their own. It's our responsibility to give them the right tools, the right knowledge, the right environment. And we can't do that unless we ourselves are empowered and we know what we are talking about and what we want to do. The second aspect that I would like to sort of bring to the fore is most of the people here represent hospitals, but I'm very passionate about patient journeys, and we know that patient journeys don't begin and end with hospitals. So there are various touch points, and not all touch points are under the control of hospitals. And we talk of collaboration and patient safety. So how can hospitals and healthcare institutions and facilities play a larger role in engaging patients' touch points so that the entire ecosystem becomes patient safe? You know, it's not about the patient getting inside the hospital and getting a safe environment or having quality accreditation standards, because that's a very tiny bit of the journey. The larger part of the journey happens outside the hospitals, even before there is a diagnosis. And if patient safety has to become a reality, and if patient has to be at the center of the conversation, then all of us here have to learn to listen, to ask the right questions, to be able to understand where is it that we need to engage better. And not all of us can do everything, so how do we need to collaborate better? And that's where the Patient Academy comes in. We have something called the Asian Patient Safety Network, which engages patient leaders from 8 countries. It has an advisory board. We also have a India Patient Safety Network that has about 60 patient organizations in this group. And our work primarily is to raise awareness on what patient safety means, and very simple things like medication harm. You know, what is the questions that you need to ask? Do you need to take prescriptions, or do you need to buy medicines without a prescription? What do you do if your pharmacist gives you a substitute? These kind of very simple questions. And we've just begun our work, but we look forward to support from all of you here to make it a reality.
Thank you. In keeping the spirit of questions, Ratna, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have any idea how many search items do you have per minute pertaining to health on Google every minute?
Millions.
No, I'm saying per minute. It's about 70,000. So the question is that when you start looking at the framework in terms of patients' knowledge base, you also have to start working with this huge source of information that they have. Does it even have anything right at the bottom saying like, listen, you really need to discuss this, because what we are seeing day in and day out is a whole lot of information, most of which is incorrect, not evidence-based, not peer-reviewed, that a patient holds on to and then holds the healthcare provider accountable for what. So it's like what Google says and what you say, and 30 years or 40 years of experience is just put aside because they read something on Google. So that is another aspect that I think increasingly we'll have to focus on in terms of source of information.
I completely agree. And we saw that with the vaccines,
Yeah.
the amount of misinformation that was there around COVID. And we did see some very good results there on how it was tackled. And I think that those lessons can be carried forward for other aspects of patient safety as well.
Right. Let's get Pavan on. Pavan, if you can come in and share your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Anupam. And I was just wanting to share this word with the audience.
Just be a bit louder, Pavan. A wee bit louder.
Many of the audience would already be knowing what iatrogenic means. Iatrogenic means the illness caused by diagnosis or treatment. And I must also say that where you started from, Anupam, that modern healthcare, allopathic healthcare, should not get a bad name. So here I should say that alternative systems of medicines also have many iatrogenic incidents. That means incidents caused by diagnosis or treatment, maybe a mistake of technology, doctor, nurse, pharmacist, healthcare worker. So what are the big culprits here? One is the skilling and systems factor. From our education to the cognition part, which you mentioned, Anupam, normal saline looks like chlorhexidine. And if you inject chlorhexidine into the vein, then it will be a catastrophe. Plus, skilling like mechanical skilling, plumbing mistakes, line maintenance, connecting a ventilator properly. So, first big culprit is the skilling. Second big culprit is faulty systems and poorly designed processes. For example, a father and a son both are admitted into the hospital, both have the same surname. The solution, so one person may be operated on what the other person actually needs. The solution, which fine doctors like Dr. Gawande, etc., have found, is checklists. But now the checklists are getting repeated. Yesterday, my wife was operated at a leading hospital for a wrist surgery, and 5 people came to her at different times before the surgery, say about 10 hours before the surgery, with the same set of questions. I was thinking, and she was getting exasperated. I was thinking that should every person who's asking the same set of question not say, to maintain the professional image of the hospital, that I am the second person who will be asking you 5 questions, madam. These are the questions. Have you already answered these questions, and how many times have you answered? That will make this repetitive process of ensuring no mistakes happen look more professional. Then poor communication and improper documentation is the other thing. Doctors have a very bad handwriting. I don't know why. And of course, now that is sorted out because most of the prescriptions are printed on the computer. But the mistakes continue. Resource-based constraints are also there. For example, an inappropriate medical device, or bigger resource-based constraint is that ICUs are not always manned by intensivists. There are cultural issues also. Nurse is hesitant to point out a mistake. In fact, when a mistake happens during a procedure, there is complete silence there. It is as if the silence of the guilty, because we have made medical science kind of infallible. There can be no mistakes. So it has become so sacrosanct in outcomes that every mistake is quietly swallowed, because today one person swallows the witnessing of other person's mistakes, and tomorrow that other person will equally generously reciprocate through silence. Nurse also doesn't work for the patient, but she works for the doctor or the management. Financial issues are also there. Unnecessary procedures. The number of unnecessary procedures performed annually is 7.5 million. And Dr. Leap of Harvard, who's a pioneer in the space of patient safety, says that 12,000 deaths happen in America because of unnecessary procedures. I will share, if I have the time, on what Dr. Pawan Gurra and Dr. Isam shared with me about why these unnecessary procedures happen and why is there why is there this, let me say, great affection for LUCA. Workload, time with the patients is less. Many doctors are very overloaded. And the last point is mistakes made by patients themselves. So these are some of the main culprits which account for iatrogenic events. Anupam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pawan. I'm going to invite Deepa for her comments, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sybil. So very good afternoon, and thank you all for being such a good audience and listening patiently. So I have spent a large part of my life in pathology services. So if we talk about patient safety in diagnostics, we talk about quality, we talk about accreditation, we talk about standardization. Of course, there is a dearth of accredited labs. Even the bodies that are accrediting the labs, like NABL, NABH, and a very few, just a limited number of the large labs which are CAP accredited, they account for less than 1% of the entire labs within India. So do we have to look for a standardization which is simpler and which is doable? Because I don't think that currently NABL or NABH would have the bandwidth to cover each one of these. There are absolutely no entry barriers for these labs. And as we have seen in the recent past, especially after COVID, almost everyone wants to own a lab or run a lab because they thought that was the best way to generate money, because I think a lot of labs did very well during COVID. But are the people aware? Are they even aware of what are these labs? What tests are they performing? What technologies do they have? Are they run by qualified people? Anyone and everyone can set up a lab. There is no minimum, qualification required, or there is no way that the skill can be tested, or there is no body which controls them, except for, I think, a lot of states, they have CMO registration, which is not really an entry barrier, because I think we all know it's not that tough to get a CMO registration. So I think it's very important. We need to think of a way how to standardize the labs, how to have a body which is mandatory to follow the standards before you can set up a lab. And secondly, how do we make the people aware? Why is it important to have to understand whether the lab is accredited or not? Is quality important? So quality is not only about the tests, it's not only about the technology. As we all know, it has to be pre-examination also. How is the sample collected? Is the patient safety taken care of while collecting the sample? Is the biomedical waste properly disposed? There are many states that you struggle even to get biomedical waste, taken from your lab, because there are very few bodies which are available, and some of them collect it once in a week. So we need to look at all the aspects, and it has to be like Dr. Ratna said, it has to be a collaborative effect. It cannot be done by just one agency alone.
Thank you, Deepa. Over to you, Rishabh.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Sybil, and very privileged to be here. I am representing probably the medical devices and the pharma sector here. And I'm very glad of the fact that, most of the multinationals we work in or we collaborate with each of you here. One of the North Star which we follow is patient safety and quality. That is something which we keep at center of everything what we do, whether it's launching products or whether it's getting solutions to the products or to the different markets which we operate in. One of the things which continue to happen today is that there is a lot of technology focus on personalized healthcare. But what we also see moving is outside of personalized healthcare, there is a focus on preventing or avoiding anything which is a preventable harm. From a healthcare technology perspective, I think that brings a very important focus that once we are able to bring these points wherein we can prevent this harm, the quality is only going to get improved, which is only going to let this patient safety improve. If we can contribute towards that, if we can keep going towards that, and what my fellow panelists said here, that a collaborative approach towards it from various sectors, from various channels is only going to help to take forward. So those will be my 2 cents, taking the technology to take it help from, taking it towards avoiding any preventable harm which can add to patient safety.
Thank you. Sanjeev, how can the industry build confidence in patient safety in its approach to market? You have huge amounts of experience with devices, pharmaceuticals, now vaccines.
Yeah, I think it is, first of all, it is industry's prime responsibility to build patient confidence. I think we cannot get away from the fact. But we need to do more in terms of how do we educate patients in many ways. I'll tell you an experiment I did about 17 years ago in peritoneal dialysis, where I actually took some doctors to counsel patients on how to use it and patients to counsel patients. And we saw that patients who counseled patients, those patients had better outcomes of managing their own safety. Yeah, so obviously there is something more to it. So how do we use patient power is something that I don't think the industry harnesses enough at all. Now with the advent of technology, we can do a lot more about this area. The other aspect about industry is, as much as we speak about our products, our research, our several things that we speak about, we don't actually speak so much about patients and patient safety. This is not our communication angle most of the times. As I believe that this is something that we need to learn more and more, that as industry we speak about patient safety much more than what we do, and actually take those patients along. Secondly, we all pharmaceutical or medical device companies will have advisory boards, this and that, but we never try and represent real patients in it who are using our products. That is another flaw that we have. Sometimes we have done, and I have done a few experimentation, including in my for some years in my management committee meetings, I used to keep a blank chair and write their patient, so that everybody is aware when they are talking that there is this invisible person who is sitting there. But clearly, the ability to bring in more patient into a discussion within companies and for companies to bring it outside is missing. In fact, I'm trying to think through now for women's health, especially how do we create a technology enabled system which works like, kind of Netflix, which really engages a lot more patients inside to talk about what happens and really are able to interact with each other in terms of their difficulties, which they sometimes don't end up sharing with doctors, sometimes they don't end up sharing anywhere else, even within the family. So how do we do that? So clearly, I think technology is allowing us a chance to bring patients more into the discussion forum, get them more involved. And clearly, the onus is more on us now to ensure that we don't lose this opportunity to get patients more involved in the discussion. Probably that is where my mind is at the moment. Hopefully, we are able to demonstrate ourselves rather than telling everybody else to do something in the next few years.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Pawan, you talked about all the things that can go wrong. Any solutions that you have? Because we have this hall full of CEOs and medical directors and head of ops. What are the solutions that you might have in mind for everyone?
So let me give you some solutions which Dr. Gawande and Dr. Leap offer. So Atul Gawande and Leap have done a lot of work in this space. First is better training of healthcare professionals, better updating. For example, almost half of the patients with upper respiratory disorders, infections, in US still receive antibiotics, whereas CDC says that 90% of upper respiratory infections are viral and should not be treated with antibiotics. So, updating. It is said readers are leaders. I would say readers are healers. Second is focusing the effort on the space which will bring best results on patient safety. The medical technology industry, as well as the hospitals, focus many a time on electrical safety of medical devices. Whereas says that the biggest problems are there in mechanical issues. For example, improper line management, plumbing, gas line mix-ups, and failure to connect ventilators to patients are examples. Giving doctors more time to spend with patients. That's another big one. Requiring hospitals to develop systems to avoid medical errors. In fact, there's no grand round on medical errors. There should be a grand round on medical errors. Requiring hospitals to report all serious medical errors and using only doctors specially trained in intensive care medicine and increasing the number of nurses. Sanjeev said that patients can often counsel patients better than doctors can. Yes, especially for rare disorders. The patient often starts knowing more about his disorder than the doctor would because the doctor has to look at hundreds of disorders of thousands of patients. But the patient only focuses on one. So that is another area. And while I'm saying all this, I must also say that whenever I'm with some doctors, I am humbled. Today, I should say to Dr. Ratna that I scored 0 on both the questions you asked. I have not read the Global Action Plan on Safety nor Patient Safety Framework. And surely I would like to read it. And also, if some gist can be presented on it, a one-page gist, that will be very useful. And that I think is the most important thing, updating of knowledge so that we are using the safest procedures, because technology moves at one speed and the skill development moves at another lower speed. The safety which we can provide or the dangers which are lurking because of this gap, that the technology has become safer but our skills have not risen to that extent. Anupam.
Thank you, Pawan. Rishabh, there have been some recent modifications in the medical device registration and material vigilance programs that are really redefining the regulatory landscape. So how do you think these changes are going to have an influence?
Thank you, Dr. Sibal. Great question. Globally and in India, the regulatory landscape is changing. What does this effectively mean is that devices or products which were probably not under the registration hemisphere are now there. Of course, for the patient, what it translates into is that the products which are coming into the country or into various markets for them are gonna be more scrutinized and more safer. But what it also translates into from an industry perspective is that it can lead to increased cost of vigilance, increased cost of ensuring the adverse events are reported in a specific way, which is of course right, but it can also lead to negative excess of therapy. What I mean is negative excess of therapy is that the therapy which could have reached a lot many more patients because of these stringent regulations might not reach. So while the safety and the quality from a regulatory perspective is very critical, there is also a need to balance both things together. So as an industry, I think it's a great opportunity for us while the regulatory landscape is changing. If we could all come together and form a ASEAN-like of network where one country is leveraging the other country's regulatory expertise to bring more products to a country at a faster rate, it's only going to be helpful from there on.
Thank you, Rishabh. Deepa, you've been in laboratory medicine, pathology for a long time. What is the change that you've seen when it comes to perceptions about lab safety? What are the kind of questions families ask when they give their samples? And do you believe the narrative has changed at all?
So I think, diagnostics like the rest of India, the patients only think of one thing, and that is what is the price. So, their awareness of safety is still
as low as what it was earlier. And I'm reminded of that ad. I think you all must have seen it, when he says, Kitna deti hai? When he's looking at the rocket or something. So it's the same in the diagnostics and the pathology industry, especially with so many more people joining in. And all that you hear is 399, 299, 199. They don't really pay attention to quality. So not only the patients, but sometimes we have this problem that, even the doctors are not aware of, you know, what exactly quality means. So I think it is very important that we must build on, the awareness. We must educate the people. Uh, like I said, even I think one of our panelists had talked about the patients also contributing to that. So in India, it's very, very common for us to struggle with even getting the name right, because they'll get themselves registered as Munni, and after 1 week they'll say कि वो तो घर का बोलता हुआ नाम है, actually कुछ और है. And when you write the other name, which is Shabnam, and then the Aadhaar card shows a third name, कि वो शादी के पहले था, ये शादी के बाद है. So it's really, really important that they understand that why it is, they should have their name right, they should have their Aadhaar card wherever possible. None of them are willing to contribute in it. Why pre-examination, the needle being used, is it disposable? Is it disposed after it has been used? None of them is really aware of it, except for maybe the large metros or the tier 1, tier 2 towns where there are more educated people. But the majority of India is in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns, where I have worked very extensively, and I find that there is a big lacuna there.
Thank you, Deepa. Now, coming to Ratna. Ratna, you quizzed everyone about, their knowledge on patient safety. What is your sense in terms of the understanding of the community at large, the patients, about the importance of patient safety? Do they understand accreditation? I mean, let's face it, I think there's a long way to go as far as accreditation goes. NABH came into existence in 2006. There are 1,108 accredited hospitals out of about 25,000 hospitals. So clearly, if that is the time we are going to take to get accreditation popular, something has to give. Fine, there's some linkage now with CGHS, there's some linkage with Ayushman Bharat, but there doesn't seem to be that much of an incentive for any organization to go down the accreditation route. Only 38 JCI accredited hospitals in a country with 1.4 billion people. So how do you see the patient playing a key role in being the catalyst and actually asking? We've never had anyone ask us, are you accredited, not accredited? What does that mean?
Well, the average man on the street doesn't understand quality, and we are a very price-sensitive nation. So as long as we get cheap services, we're not bothered whether they are safe or of high quality, and that is the truth of the matter. Having said that, I'd like to just quote two small examples. So I was referred to a rheumatologist in a corporate hospital in Gurgaon, and this gentleman sits on the 5th floor. Now, the hospital has a battery of lifts, but they were so busy that I had to climb those 5, stairs. And when I reached the 5th floor, I was in no mood to see the doctor. And I did give this feedback to the doctor saying, this is terrible. He was extremely compassionate, listened to me, but his statement was, I am a consultant here. I have no say in the design of the hospital. So patients do give feedback, but whether that translates into action or not is a big question. The second example, yesterday I went for a refill for diabetes medicines for my husband, and a lady walks in to the pharmacy, which is a corporate chain, by the way, and says, I have fever for 2 days and sore throat, can you give me something? And the pharmacist gives her 3 tablets of Cefexime, Calpol 1 strip, Alex cough lozenges, 1 strip, and a cough syrup. And I asked this gentleman, why did you give the antibiotic without a prescription? And he says, if I don't, the pharmacy across the street will. I will lose my business, so I have to do this. So I think the awareness has to be, and it is a simple messaging that needs to go into the pharmacy. Just put a message there, no antibiotics will be prescribed without a prescription from a qualified medical practitioner. I think that message should go out to everyone. Having said that, patients do understand, when harm happens, what didn't go well, but they have no channels to sort of direct this passion into a positive force, which is why you see all these negative incidents happening. So my advice would be use these experiences to channelize them into a positive force so that there is some change in the system that is happening instead of a clash. Right now it is, patients versus doctors and patients versus hospitals, and usually the doctors are very nice. It's the systems that are not standing up to the expectation of the patients. But because patients deal with the doctors themselves, they are the ones they can vent their anger out with. If you give them an alternative channel which is neutral, then perhaps there is a system or a method of collecting these information or experiences of the patients that can be pulled together into a positive outcome, so that the system changes and it's not an individual that is being targeted. And we do that by collecting patient stories. However, these are very small numbers. And if you do it in a cohesive way, in which there is no individual or organization named, but just the experience, so that the experience tells us where the system is failing, I think a lot of awareness can come within the community. And people will then become aware that if they are saving a few rupees on a test or a hospital procedure, they might actually end up spending more because of the complications it brings or because of negative outcomes of the procedure.
Thank you so much, Ratna. Very important points about bridging the gap and working together, and not being on two different sides of the fence. Going to open this for a couple of questions. Yes, Shravan.
If we look at other industries like, say, aviation, they have a system of immediate transparency of any near misses or quality issues, safety issues that might impact passengers, and it's immediately known to everybody. Do you foresee a situation where we can drive accountability through increased transparency so patients can know if there was a mistake made? It's quite a leap, but do you see that happening in hospitals?
I think, Shravan, I mean, the way forward is to have a greater degree of transparency and not being so defensive. But it also requires a cultural change in the minds of the patient. Now, I mean, there's several of us practicing doctors here. And somehow I feel that in India, the expectation of the patient's unreal. And when I say unreal is that nobody should ever die in hospital. Now, if that were the case, no doctor's relatives would ever die. So this whole thing about immortality, and you'll have someone who's got triple vessel coronary artery disease, has had a bypass, has got renal dysfunction, and we do a liver transplant, and the expectation is 100% survival. Now that doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So I think we also have to slightly recalibrate the expectation. I mean, I think most doctors are under tremendous stress because the expectations are unreal. So I think we recalibrate the expectation. We definitely need a greater degree of transparency, and I think we should have an open dialogue. The idea really is every hospital, every healthcare provider, every doctor, nurse wants their patient to go home and go home fast, because that's what we committed to that at 18 when we chose medicine as this profession. So we believe it's a sacred duty to look after patients. So I think a dialogue is very important. And coming to aviation, and I think this comparison with aviation has gone on for several decades. I think it's a very interesting comparison on one level, but then I think it's too simplistic. How many types of aircrafts are there in the world? Right? Boeing has 8, Airbus has 10, and then you'll have Bombardier and a few Brazilian and so on. And how many diagnoses do we have? 32,000. And every week a new condition gets diagnosed. So it's very complex. Medicine is very complex. 7 billion people, 7 billion different types of genome. The same paracetamol works differently in someone because of epigenetics, which we are just beginning to understand. So medicine is very complex. Aviation is not that complex. There is a lot that we can learn from aviation. We can learn from other industries. But we have to be realistic in our approach. And there was this talk about cultural change and why don't nurses speak up? And it's a very, and because you mentioned aviation, this came to my mind. It's a very interesting example about aviation and culture. So Korean Air lost an aircraft about 20 years ago when it crash landed into a mountain in Guam. And Korean Air had lost 6 aircrafts before. And it's very interesting what the cockpit recorder said. So there was a storm brewing, and the co-pilot, in the Korean culture, a co-pilot and the engineer will not address or look the captain in the eye, the commander. So there's a lot of rain, and the co-pilot says, I think the radar has given us such valuable information. Now he's saying he's worried about the rain, but he's not saying that he's terrified of what's going to happen, and he just says it's given us valuable information. And when the aircraft should have done a go around, the co-pilot and the engineer do not speak, because in their culture they're not supposed to raise this question. And after that, Korean Air went through a whole transformation exercise. Is perhaps the safest airline in the world. And I think we need to have a cultural change in our system, where the nurses have to tell the senior most surgeon, listen, you didn't wash your hands. And we know that surgeons and doctors quite often forget to wash their hands, and nobody has the courage to tell the number one surgeon or the number one doctor that you haven't washed your hands. And I think we need to bring that cultural change within hospital staff. We need to communicate a bit better. And this whole hierarchy has to change. Once you're a professional, you're a professional. And yes, you have to be respectful, but you should be able to air your views if you see that something can be done to improve care. And I think it's a cultural change which we need to work on, and we need to empower nurses. And of course, we need to engage with patients way better than we have in the years gone by. Anvisha, do we have time for one question or time's up? One more question or comment? Well, great. So thank you very much. Big thank you. Yes, Ratna.
Just a quick response to what you said about patients' expectations. I think we need to change the narrative on how healthcare messaging is done, and we hear more and more, people corporates pitching each other, saying we give the best at the lowest cost, and this is the package that you will get. So many tests with so much little money and all that stuff. And that creates a false sense of expectation amongst patients. I think NatHealth can do a lot to dismantle that kind of misinformation that's floating around. Because if you set the expectations right, then the patient won't have that kind of question in the head that I paid more than what was promised by the other agency, but I got less than what I expected.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
Talking of, okay.
Thank you so much. And we really need to change the narrative. So thank you for those words of wisdom. Thank you, panelists. Can we have a group photograph, please?
I wanted to say something as everybody is gathering for the group photograph.
It was an amazing panel, and we should give a round of applause to all the panelists. My special thanks to Dr. Anupam Sibal for moderating the session, Mr. Pavan Chaudhary, who joined us online, Mr. Sanjeev Navangol, Mr. Rishabh Gupta, Ms. Ratna Devi, and Dr. Deepa Dave. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next session, which is going to be the last session, but it is a very important one and very close to all of our hearts. Can I please call upon on stage Dr. Narottam Puri to give an overview of the patient safety campaign, its significance in today's scenario. Dr. Narottam Puri needs no introduction, and he is the Principal Advisor, Quality Council of India, Advisor, Medical Operations, Fortis Healthcare, Advisor, Healthcare Services and Medical Value Travel, FICCI, Honorary Professor, Indian Medical Association, Co-founder, Center for Design and Innovation. Dr. Narottam Puri in safety. He has been recognized for his unstinted
a better job of fine-tuning whatever is wrong with you. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen. So the expectations part lead to a delusion of perfection in the minds of people about healthcare, and that creates half the problem. We've heard a lot about what is wrong with hospital systems in providing patient safety and quality, what's wrong with medtech companies, what's wrong with nurses, etc. We also have heard a lot about what are the patient's rights. Nobody seems to talk about what are the patient's responsibilities. No right comes unencumbered with responsibilities. If I prescribe a medication to you and you don't take it, then I'm afraid the results are not going to be as good. But nobody is talking about what are the patient's responsibilities. So there are many angles to patient safety, and it's certainly true that whilst it's an important element, probably the most important element in the quality movement, it is not the end all and be all of quality. Preventing risks and reducing harm is the fundamental theme of patient safety as enunciated by the World Health Organization. But I just want each one of you to please start looking at your watches, starting now, for 1 minute. Please start looking at your watches. Do nothing else. Thank you. 60 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 people in low-income countries have died because of an error, a medical error. In this time that you just saw on your watches, 5 people died in low-income countries. Probably another 2 died in, can you have the slide, please? Probably another 2 died in more developed countries. And yet we don't talk about patient safety. We talk about how many died in COVID, how many died in the influenza epidemic. Nobody talks of this. So the awareness is completely missing. Nobody pays attention to, next slide please, that 2.5 million die every year. Anupam mentioned about 32 million having adverse reactions. 2.5 million die. 15% of hospital activity in OECD countries is spent on managing adverse events. 4 in 10 are affected in OPD settings, and 80% of these are preventable. And 50% of patient harm is from just medication errors. So the pharma industry and the hospitals contribute to this, but the patients not asking the right question is also part of the problem. The fundamental understanding that has to permeate through the messaging that we need to do is healthcare fundamentally is unsafe. Not just here, but anywhere in the world. And there are many reasons for which we've already talked about. But the campaign that the World Health Organization did last year as its focus, September 17th is the Patient Safety Day, was on medication errors. And this year is more on communication. So I'm really delighted that NatHealth has thought of this as an important theme in trying to communicate to not just the medical professionals, but also to the entirety of the population in India by having a campaign on patient safety as a part and parcel of the quality movement. And this can be done through better communication. So the three principles that we normally talk about is information, education, and communication. So through the use of a website which has been designed, and by the first panel that mentioned, I think Dr. Vijay Agarwal, I think, mentioned the fact that, the leaders need to put money where their mouths are. This has been achieved through NatHealth's intervention. So I'd like to, without further ado, just invite Dr. Shravan Subramaniam, Dr. Ashutosh Raghuvanshi, and Dr. Amira Shah to release the microsite, which has been made possible with the efforts of a lot of others, which we'll come to. But may I request you to come up on the dais and perhaps have a couple of words to say. Dr. Raghuvanshi, please. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the 7 principal problems of patient safety, which is communication. And that communication is not within the institution, but also communicating with the patient's relatives, which has been lacking. Over a period of time, we have needed efforts to focus on quality, because as Oscar Wilde said many years ago, we live in a world where we know the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. That is the fundamental problem. And I think once we start understanding the value of what we bring to the table, half the problems will be over. But our responsibility still rests in letting the patient know what questions to ask, letting the patient know that these are the problems. And therefore, I think it's a wonderful job that NatHealth has done in collaboration with NABH, QCI, to come to a stage where we've got the microsite ready. It's still in its very early stages, but these are the ladies and gentlemen, along with my friend Siddhartha, who made this possible. Today in this session, we were supposed to have the participation of the chairman of QCI, the CEO of NABH, the chairman of NABH, but all of them have been called up for a Chintan Shivar in Banaras, and this morning they've had to go. But we've got some recorded messages to play for you, first from the Secretary General of the Quality Council of India. May we have that playing, please?
It's a matter of great pride for us in QCI that 2 of our boards, the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers, NABH, as well as NABL, National Accreditation Board for Calibration and Testing Laboratories, is partnering with NatHealth in promoting and in disseminating the message of quality, both in the healthcare sector as well as in the testing and calibration sector. There is no doubt that we in India are one of the most accomplished healthcare systems around the world. And we are technically very competent. The only thing is that there are a lot of hospitals who have still not started the journey of quality. And therefore, it is important that we promote quality among the citizens of this country so that they start demanding quality. And once we do that, there will be a pull factor for quality in the healthcare ecosystem in the country. I'm happy that both my boards have taken a step forward in collaborating with NatHealth, and NatHealth is emerging as one of the biggest advocacy groups in the healthcare ecosystem. And I'm sure with our partnership in the healthcare system, we will be able to promote quality around the country, and it will be a win-win situation for both the organizations.
That was Professor Ravi Singh, Secretary General of QCI. May we hear from the Chairman of NABH, Professor Mahesh Verma.
I take this opportunity to congratulate NATHEALTH for launching microsite promoting patient safety healthcare in healthcare. We are very happy at NABH to partner this collaboration for the larger purpose of improving health of every citizen in the country. In the year of India's G20 presidency, I think this initiative will take us one step closer to the mission of one earth, one family, and one future.
And lastly, the CEO of NABH, Dr. Atul Kochar.
I'm immensely grateful to the leadership of NatHealth and their vision in this initiative of promoting healthcare quality and patient safety. I truly believe that such initiatives have the potential of taking quality to the last in the line. Today, NABH is partnering with more than 17,000 big and small hospitals in 8 countries, and initiatives such as this truly make it worthwhile to create and empower patient safety measures, and they are likely to have a huge impact in the long term. I congratulate the entire team which has been working so hard under the very able guidance of Dr. Narottam Puri sir, Mr. Siddharth Bhattacharya, and the entire team and support of NatHealth for this venture. I'm sure this collaboration will have a huge impact on the entire health ecosystem. Thank you so much once again, NatHealth, for partnering with us.
Before I ask Amira and the two gentlemen to release the microsite formally, I'd just like to put on record, may I have the slide of the consultant advisory groups recognize the contribution that they've made to it. Air Marshal Pavan Kapoor, Dr. Atul Kochar, Dr. Akash Sood, Dr. T.S. Deepak, Dr. Ashok Moharana, and Dr. Gaurav Saxena. Also, as we were saying that this microsite, it has a very small, catchy name, so it's easy for anyone to follow. It is Choose Safer Healthcare. We are telling that safer healthcare is available in India. Please choose safer healthcare. So this mention was made in the 2 panels as well. So may I request Shravan, Ashutosh, and Amira, please, to say a few words and to release the microsite.
Thank you, Dr. Puri. First of all, I'd like to really acknowledge and appreciate the effort that you have put in. Thank you so much for bringing all of us together, all these organizations, and mentoring us to pull this together. I believe that a well-informed patient is an empowered patient who can take better care of themselves, their families, and eventually their communities. And all of us here, leaders in healthcare, we were looking awkwardly at each other when the previous panel was asking us questions about patient safety charter. I think this will go one step in the right direction for all of us to be better informed and more empowered. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the goal of this entire initiative, as we start with one step now, obviously the goal of this entire initiative is to really scale this so that we are able to involve all kinds of organizations, NGOs, corporates, not only healthcare industry, but all other stakeholders from across other industries as well, to be able to really create this initiative into something which is really overpowering, overwhelming for all patients across India. This has to become the default site in the future that patients go to understand what's happening behind the scenes and for them to make choices for themselves. And that's a very audacious goal. I think we're all going to set for ourselves, but one that this truly will be one step towards.
Dr. Ashutosh Raghuvanshi.
Thank you. First of all, I think NatHealth is the right platform to take it. When the NatHealth leadership was discussing about various projects which should be undertaken by us together as a group, and NatHealth is a unique organization because it represents not only the hospital care, but after hospital care, elderly care, insurance, medtech, etc. So during that discussion, actually, it was Amira's idea that we should consider patient safety and quality as one of the centralmost themes. And from that, this has emerged. This is just the beginning. But I think as a healthcare ecosystem, we want to focus a lot on how we focus on both safety as well as quality through the entire journey of the patient, not only the part which is in the hospital or in a healthcare institution, but what is outside of it, what is the pharmacotherapy, etc., and all related areas. So I'm very glad that our team has worked this together. And I definitely want to thank Dr. Puri for his leadership in putting all of us together and guiding us. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Can we just, there are 8 very short videos which have been produced, but may I request you to take your seat, please? Thank you. They're very short videos. To some of you in metro towns and very well-informed audiences, they may appear very, very basic. But just imagine the impact when they are translated, and this website has the proviso for translating into 8 different languages. So once it is translated, it will mean something to a very common citizen. And these are very basics and very, very rudimentary steps which have been taken. And I think the baby that you have of Choose Safer Healthcare is just a toddler learning to crawl. And I think a long battle lies ahead of us to create many such information videos. And this is only, videos are only a small part of the microsite. As is envisioned, it will become a site for information and linkages to, let's say, what Dr. Ratnadevi was saying about the various patient safety initiatives available anywhere in the world, the research that's been done that CAHO is doing. CAHO, in fact, is bringing out a book on it next month. And what NABH, QCI, and NABL working together with NatHealth can do in promoting the cause of patient safety. Because ultimately, all of us have only one aim, and that is to have a safer healthcare system and well-informed customers or patients in the Indian ecosystem. So let's just take a look. And once we do that, I would also request that if you have any feedbacks, please give it to Anvesha. We've got 8 so far, but we'll show you just 4. So another 3 minutes of your time. These are just some representative ones. I hope when the time comes, these can be built upon to provide more and more information. Some of this information, of course, is provided at the time, but if you are already in the know of these, it helps. And may I also prompt you to ask the right questions. May I have the slide that shows who are the people who have actually put their money where their mouth is? So these are the people who've actually helped us in guiding what information should be provided. We'd like to request you, if anyone would volunteer, please let us know. And we'll be happy to accommodate your views in bettering this site. As the time goes by, we'll make many mistakes. These are just crawling time, as I said. We haven't even learned to walk. But it's a sustainability effort which needs to be kept up if we want results, because culture change is not going to come very quickly. So I'm really grateful to the partners who have actually donated their monies to make this possible, and highly obliged to NatHealth for giving me an opportunity to bring the various organizations like NABH, QCI, NABL together to help you in this cause. I do hope that this partnership flourishes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Puri, for all your advice, guidance, and mentorship, and help us walk us through and finally, make this website, microsite in this shape. Thank you so much. And we would need your support and guidance in the coming years too. This is just the beginning, and this is a multi-year program that NatHealth is going to run. With this, I just moved to the last segment of our 2 days event, which is coming to an end. And may I please request Dr. Vikram A. Munshi from White Space Consulting and Capability Building. Sorry, Dr. Vikram Munshi, White Space Consulting and Capability Building, to provide the summit wrap-up and concluding remarks.
Good afternoon. Uh, I think I'll start off with a small confession. When Siddharth and Anvesha gave me this opportunity, they said that you you and your team need to sit down and prepare the strategy paper and attend the sessions. I thought it would be a piece of cake. We'll sit down, we'll note down and all. But then I realized that we didn't even get time to have a cup of coffee because the sessions were so interesting that there was no leaving, and how the time flew, I had no idea. So anyway, and 5 minutes is there. So how can I wrap up a session for 2 days in 5 minutes? I don't know. But anyway, the Siddharth and Anvesha, a very, very big thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thanks to NATHEALTH also. There is a 7-page document on my laptop, which I start reading out, 5 minutes will pass. So what I'll do is, I'll just wrap up from what I felt being a part of the healthcare industry. Our main domain is pharma strategy and marketing, but we had entered into healthcare. So the first thing was that when we saw one thing, there is a belief which one of our favorite sayings is, there's this book called The Obstacle is the Way. And I think Mr. Paul's opening remark actually encapsulated that spirit of obstacle is the way. When he said that COVID actually brought out the best in us, whether it was in terms of diagnostics, whether it was in terms of developing drugs and vaccines, and whether it was in terms of our digitalization. I think that actually leapfrogged the way, yeah, we were strong, but I think that was the testing, that obstacle or that crisis which we faced actually brought out the best in us. And as a consulting and capability company, what Anvesha was saying, our company is called Consulting and Capability Building. We firmly believe that any opportunity is only a function of the capability. If I don't have capability, it's not an opportunity. So we have these capabilities. So now what is the opportunity? The next section, which was on dialysis, I mean, that was an eye-opener because looking at dialysis, we got an insight of how PPP works, So one of the key take-homes which I saw is that typically in our country, and which is common, we have resources, but those resources are not there in the areas where you need. And this is the disbalance. So how can resources be allocated to areas where it is needed? How can that allocation happen? And I think very, very important point which was raised also is for the resources to reach where they are needed, we need to have a registry, National Renal Registry. I think that was a very, very important point which was raised so that, yeah, it is painstaking work, but so was, building the COVID app and COVID vaccination. I think we have, as a country, we are geared to taking up these challenges. The second thing, what that dialysis example, the discussion taught us was the financial sustainability of anything. There has to be a win-win situation at the end of the day. And those, the challenge of the patient not having to travel more than 60 kilometers for a dialysis. I mean, anybody who's staying in a metro knows 60 kilometers would be Gurgaon to Ghaziabad maybe, and a bit further. Can you imagine? We are talking about one whole day gone. It's not that you can order like a Zomato or Swiggy. So even 60 kilometers is something which is a huge, huge ask, which is there. But yeah, that may be a start to there, and there has to be a win-win solution. As an entrepreneur ourselves and being a self-funded organization, we understand the pressures on margin. We understand what is OPEX, what is CAPEX. And I think the point which was made that there are a lot of the companies which are moving into public-private partnerships in this space. But how is it that the payments, how can the working capital, because it's a volume game, and how can the government help to make sure that this becomes sustainable, not only from the pricing point of view, but from a working capital financing point of view? Which brings to financing. And now, incidentally, this was the post-lunch session. All of us in healthcare know post-lunch means what? When the blood gets diverted to the gut and creates hypoxia in the brain, right? And that also financing. While it's a very interesting subject, so we actually, Kedar and me and the team were awake when doing that. And I think that was amazingly that point of, making sure that there is an insurance product, a VGF insurance product, which can actually help the middle class. I think that point is well taken. And this was somewhere where I was also feeling when Shravan and all were talking about digitalization and adoption, that when you have so much of data, and I think we'll come to digitalization better, there, all the data can be used to actually figure out these insurance products. Who is your target patient cohort? What should be the load? And there are experts over here. This is what we saw. So that financing was very interestingly done. And one other thing which we saw is that, again, we are not experts. We were just observing that a point was made that when we're looking at financing, are we clubbing too many things together? Maybe infrastructure, that is CapEx financing and OpEx financing, can it be separate? Each one has different, ways of running. And I think the example which flashed into us in our mind was the hospitality industry, where hotels are built by somebody, but they may be run by a group which is more efficient in running the hotels, not necessarily building and running those hotels. So can there be something which could be taken from there? And financing in terms of your infrastructure, and this is something which we always have a debate with our clients also, and internally within the team, that what came first? Was it the highways or was it the cars? Right? So is it, I think that what today they were talking about the UP infrastructure with, allied health, a lot of colleges, the infrastructure is there, but there are no people in it. And I think even when the dialysis thing was talked about, we are talking about 2 lakh dialysis patients or something, and we're talking about around 2,500 nephrologists. Now, what is the infrastructure here? Is it the dialysis machine, dialysis centers? Or is it also, yes, we also know that the nephrologist is not needed so much at running the dialysis centers, but is that 2,000 sufficient? Is that the infrastructure which can be ramped up? So that was also a very interesting point which we are seeing, that in infrastructure means the hard infrastructure also means the soft infrastructure. We'll come to that a bit later. In digitalization, now digital typically when we saw COVID happening, our main business being in pharma sector, digital was the new mantra. People went for digital. And one of the things which we always told our clients was, and somebody had made that point, that if you give a person a hammer, everything will look like a nail. So it's not कि digital के साथ हमें क्या करना है. It is what digital is an enabler. How is it going to solve a problem which I'm having? And I think what Sanjeev was mentioning in the last session, in pharma we have this, typically the patient funnel. Prevalence, awareness, diagnosis, choice of treatment, brand choice of treatment, adherence and treatment. Typically, all your prevalence and awareness to diagnosis is a word where digital can actually play a huge role. And I think what the ADH, Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, what we're talking about, I see that as a platform to make sure that a lot more patients, or I would say patients, people at risk, are consuming about information about disease awareness. If they can definitely watch YouTube videos, why can't they watch patient education videos? Smartphones are there, data is cheap, and you can see them. I mean, how many of you, when you're going for your morning walk, you don't have to think only of some upcountry rural market. There are rural pockets within the metros we live. When you're seeing your Uber driver accessing your mobile phone, What is he listening to? But he or she is not aware of the diseases. So can digital be used as a tool for driving awareness and that primary screening? That's very, very, very critical. So again, I think when we are reflecting and when we are tasked to create that paper, we will also look at it from a point of view, what is the problem it can solve and where? In fact, in the last session, before Dr. Puri's session, a point was made of mapping the patient journey, which are all the touch points where the patient needs and what is the problem with the patient faces and can digital actually help in a role there. So, and then after this session, then when towards the end, when Dr. Somya came and we were all spellbound listening, I think the point which he made, obviously, we all come with a frame of reference. He talked about obesity as an epidemic, and that goes as a bullet to my brain because of obvious reasons that I'm suffering from that same epidemic of obesity. And how can that be managed and all? But I think, again, a point which he made, which is stuck over there, that our health and the planet's health is very closely related. So while we are talking about, the bigger measures where we as stakeholders are talking about, what are the small steps we can be conscious about saying that, yes, whether it's water conservation, whether it's use of plastics or whether what, that we are actually linked to our planet's health, something what James Cameron in his movie Avatar also mentioned, that we're as healthy or as not healthy as our planet. I think that's a very, very important take home which came. Today we talked about capability building, and again that resonated very powerfully with us because, as I said, our company's name is Consulting and Capability Building. So when we're talking about capability building, the points which were made about supply creating demand, about the need, there was an interesting debate where one person who said, I can create the supply, but somebody has to create the demand. And then there was a thing that, no, demand is there, but you create the supply. I think that was a very interesting thing. And typically we have seen this in the pharma sector also, that what was a medical rep's profession of choice 15 years back, it is no longer a profession of choice. We deal with 30% attrition. We see people coming in. But at the same time, the point is it about qualifications, about skills? I think that is the core message which is there everywhere. While we have our courses, while we have teachers who are teaching, trainers who are teaching the courses, and those industry with the industry feedback that these are the skills we want. At the end of the day, anybody who's hiring, I mean, we hire for our companies, you hire for your companies. You're not hiring for a set of qualifications. You're hiring for a set of skills, and that's important. So somewhere that needs to be very, very properly put, that when we talk about degrees, when we talk about these colleges, how can we actually impart skills? And again, it's a chicken and egg story. If there are skills, then the ticket price will go up and people are willing to pay. I mean, how many of you would want people working at suboptimal at 50% and paying them 50%? Nobody wants it. It's not a solution which is fulfilling. And then वो छोड़ के चले जाता है, ठीक है, you heave a sigh of relief, you get another mediocre person to fill it. That is not how you build up a business. So I think that's another point where the industry can, I think it's good that they bought this point. So this was about capability. And then not supporter or any very independent thing. I think the MOU which was there was a lot of data that doctors shared over here when he was presenting. But I realized one thing, that when you listen to that session, at what level has the coverage gone? And we are talking about coverage reaching, and that point struck me that here is this poor person, he or she is debilitated, and yet in that coverage, he or she is going to get 225 rupees, if I'm not mistaken, for missing his or her job. And that was amazing. That was amazing. That is true patient centricity, which we talk about. So I think the lesson which we also always practice, and we say, if there's an intent, there is a way. There is always a way. And that, the statistics actually, they highlighted that. The CSR was definitely inspiring, and it actually shows that if we work together, how can behavioral at the grassroots level get changed? And because we're marketing consultants, we always believe that everything can be solved by communication. There's a marketing solution to a lot of problems. Quality, definitely, I think point which was made, quality and safety, these are the bedrock of what we talk about. I think there was the point even made by Dr. Puri in those slides of 1 minute, how many patients actually die. And the point which he made, that communication is the key. So this is the key take home. We saw the whole jigsaw puzzle. And at the last, when we are talking, there are big companies, there are, startups who are investing. Why should we do it? And, that question which we ask, what is in it for me? And here is where I go back to when Henry Ford I, when he, put the assembly line, he raised the minimal work, daily wage per hour, I think it was per hour, no, per day, to $5 per day. And people said, why are you raising it to $5? And he said, no, I'm creating a middle class which is going to consume my own cars. So if all of us as stakeholders, if we are going to contribute to the wellness, at the end of the day, what's in it for us? A healthy economy will be a healthy person, inclusive health will be the consumers of our products. So we stand to gain rather than depending on a few things. So I think that lesson of opportunity and what's in it for us, that if a healthy healthcare system is if the patient is healthy and all of us can contribute to it. So at the end of the day, I would definitely like to thank again Siddharth and Anvesha, especially from NATHEALTH. To me, NATHEALTH is both of you for giving this opportunity. And it was such a pleasure. And I think me and my team go back with a lot of ideas to churn out and to see how we can, as Whitespace, we can play a part in this journey to take it forward. Thank you so much for your patient listening, friends.
Thank you, sir. And good evening, everyone, for the vote of thanks at the 9th NatHealth Annual Summit. Thank you to each one of you for your support. NatHealth is much stronger today, and this has been possible only because of your contribution and valuable support. The last 2 days have been full of so many enriching discussions and perspectives. Let me begin my thank with NASSCOM, our digital and innovation partner, led by Mr. Sanjeev Malhotra, supported by his team Shantanu, Shija, Sudhanshu, and Mahadevi. I extend my sincere gratitude to the senior government dignitaries who joined us on both the days. Senior representatives from industry, multilateral agencies, academia, and our knowledge partners. To name our knowledge partners, Whitespace, ENY, TIE, PwC, CKD, IQVIA, ADL, O3, BCG. Special thanks to all past presidents, immediate and current president of NatHealth. Big thanks to the leadership team led by Dr. Raghuvanshi, Dr. Shravan Subramaniam, Dr. Raghuvanshi, Ms. Amira, Mr. Sunil Thakur, and Ms. Vrinda Mathur for their continued support and guidance. GC members, regional chairs, co-chairs, forum leaders, and special thanks to our sponsors. Platinum sponsors, Krishna Diagnostics, O3 Capital. Gold sponsors, Fortis, GE Healthcare, Teramo, IQVIA, Vigon. Silver sponsors, Apollo, Dr. Lal Pathlabs, Maringo Asia, Indus Health, Siemens Healthcare, Vocard, Metropolis, GenWorks, and Polymed. I would also like to thank partner agencies, HealthBiz Insight, event partner, India Attitude, special thanks to Bhanu, Avian V, Chandra, Manaswani, Aniket, Shamishta, Nitin Mantri, and Lattice One, Faisal and team, our website team, Digital Palmy, and lastly, NatHealth Secretariat team, led by Siddharth sir, who always, with his vision, helps us connect the dots. Supported by dear friends and colleagues Anvesha, Anugrah, Chirag, Momita, and Pushpa, and our office support, Rajesh Bhaiya. Once again, a big thanks to all of you. Now, I would request to stay back here for the AGM meeting, which will start at 4:30. Thank you so much. Thank you.